to the next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zia Sonnabed, and I wear many hats, but among them, I'm a very long-term farm inspector with CCOF, California Certified Organic Farmers, and work on organic policy issues, and to that extent, currently serve on the National Organic Standards Board of the USDA National Organic Program. The title of this session is Why Organic Seed Matters, and it seems hardly necessary to have such a title at such an event as this, where it's all about organic seed, and everyone wouldn't be here unless they thought organic seed matters. But suffice it to say that many of us in the organic movement for a long time have felt that organic seed does matter a great deal, because it's the only way we can assure a complete organic system on our farms and achieve a holistic life cycle of our inputs match up with our outputs, and every step along the way is as organic as we possibly can make it. So fortunately, the crafters of the organic regulations felt the same way. However, we all acknowledged pre-days of the federal rule that we're really not ready to go all the way there, because the supply is just not there for organic seeds yet. In fact, at the time the federal rule was first being talked about in the mid-90s and crafted, the supply of untreated seed wasn't even there yet. And in California, where we had a state law that predated the federal rule since 1979, I think the first one, it always had put an end date for treated seed to be allowed. And that end date kept getting pushed up as the end date came, and we were like, okay, 1990, we're not quite there yet. 1992, we're not quite there yet. But a huge step forward when the federal rule came out, that in even the first one in 97, which didn't get actually enacted until 2002, that we were there yet and we could prohibit treated seed altogether. So I see ourselves in organic seed on a similar trajectory of, we're increasing supply, educating growers to learn more about it, giving them the tools and resources to find the organic seed, and eventually we'll be there. But in the meantime, the early crafters of the federal organic regulations, the early NOSB, recognized that organic seed was very important, and that we weren't there yet, and so discussed ways to codify that in regulations. When the federal rule came out, it does contain a clause that says organic producers must use organic seed. Then it goes on to say, unless an equivalent variety is not available. In the construct of the federal rule, where everything is managed by each grower's organic system plan, each grower would have to explain how they looked for organic seeds in the organic system plan, and explain to their inspector why the variety they needed to choose as non-organic was not available commercially. Although we inspectors know a lot about all kinds of things involved in organic agriculture, exactly what an equivalent variety meant was not something that the average inspector knows very much about. And so it was very difficult for us inspectors to evaluate, okay, why are you growing this non-organic seed, and is it really equivalent? And especially, as you can imagine, those of you who are market gardeners know what I'm talking about. You may be growing 40 different crops and several varieties of each crop. So we're talking about having to look at hundreds of seed varieties and try and assess compliance with equivalent varieties. So this is proved to be very challenging. And right from the beginning, both the National Organic Program and the NOSB realized that they had to do a little bit more in the way of explanation and training for inspectors and training for certifiers on how to evaluate whether a sufficient efforts were being made towards sourcing organic seed. It also very early on became apparent that cost could not be used as a reason to not procure organic seed. That even if it cost more, the growers still had to do their best to try and find suitable organic seed. Now, in the field, I heard as an inspector, all kinds of different, I don't want to call them excuses because many times they were very valid, but all kinds of reasons why growers would not. Number one was always, well, I tried organic seed and it really didn't come up very well. It didn't achieve the germination standards I was used to seeing in my regular seed. Well, we can't fault a grower for needing good germination in their crops. And so that's something that the organic seed industry itself has to deal with, producing enough quality seed so that growers won't have a bad experience with their seed. We also heard, I planted yellow crookneck, but most of them didn't have crooked necks. Well, once again, a certain amount of attention needs to be paid to quality organic seed. Then there were other more problematic issues than that, even where a grower couldn't find organic seed, and yet another grower right up the street was growing that crop for seed and selling it to a seed company. But they may have had a contract for the seed, and the contract was to a seed broker, and the broker sent it to Europe, and then the European company sold it back to the American companies. And so the grower right up the street couldn't get that seed that the grower next door was growing. So there's some clearly distribution issues, shall we say, and obstacles for growers to find organic seed. So fortunately, OSA, Organic Seed Alliance, undertook to do a survey called the State of Organic Seed Report, which I'm sure you're all familiar with by now, or you'll hear more about later probably. And that really tried to assess how much progress we'd made towards looking at organic seed. And I'm not going to go into the details because Kiki or Michaela, I'm sure, can do it much more justice than me. But it was clear from that there was still quite a ways to go, although it was looking, it was baby steps forward towards looking at more organic seed. The NOSB in the meantime, undertook to write a more comprehensive guidance as to what the clause in the law might mean and what was sufficient in terms of searching for organic seed. That guidance came out, the NOSB recommendation came out in, I believe, 2010 or 2009, and had a number of steps for certifiers to follow, for growers to follow. It made the call to have a database, a comprehensive database where organic seed could be, where growers could refer to source organic seed, and generally tried to strengthen the existing standard. In these, this was not rulemaking, and there's a distinction in the USDA between what they call rulemaking, which is the actual law itself, and guidance. And the guidance are things that certifiers do have to follow and growers have to follow, but it doesn't carry the strength of the law in terms of enforcement. So the National Organic Program took the NOSB's recommendation and crafted a guidance. It's called NOP 5029, and it's guidance on seeds, annual seedlings, and planting stock. So it also, besides seeds, it clarified certain things about planting stock and how long it had to be in the ground before you could sell organic crops from it, and those type of issues. The proposed guidance was released in 2011 with a comment period, and then the final guidance was released in March of this past year, March 2013. And in it, when the federal government moves to final from proposed, they always read all the comments and then put forward a final guidance and then reasons for accepting or rejecting what the different comments are. Now, I do apologize for not having slides about this. I'm one-handed at the moment, which makes it very hard to make slides. But those of you who want to see more of the details on the slide tomorrow can go to the workshop with Gwendolyn Wired and Mark Lipson on seeds and breeds in federal policy or something like that. And Gwendolyn will have some slides about what the guidance says. So first of all, the guidance provides a definition of equivalent varieties, but it's still a bit of a fuzzy definition because it has to do with performance, quality, and quantity. And we all know that, quantity is more absolute, but performance and quality are definitely subjective in the eyes of the user. And so as an inspector, if I go out and I have a grower tell me it just didn't give me the yield I needed, or it got a disease that, I didn't think I would get, or whatever they say, I write it down in my report, but it's not for me to say that they didn't look hard enough based on that criteria that they're using for the performance of their seed. It provides some examples of these form, quantity, and quality. And they're along the lines of the things I've just talked about. It has to germinate properly, it has to be true to type, and it has to perform as that variety should. There's a description in the guidance of having to keep records to show that you as a grower did look suitably for organic seed. Now, that's also a fairly flexible thing. Some certifiers were just saying you have to look for 3 sources and that's it. We take a much more broad view of that. If you are working with a seed broker who will try and find it for you, as long as they looked and are familiar with the certified certification rules. If you perform variety trials on your farm, that counts as looking at different varieties, and we do encourage that strongly for growers to perform variety trials. And if you go outside your normal frame of reference, like many of our growers in CCUF who tend to grow for processing or under contracts, they only look usually they have one supplier for each type of crop, and we just ask them to go outside their normal frame of reference to try and source some organic seed. Okay, the guidance also clarifies what can be used for seed treatments. And this has been an area of strong, well, I don't want to say controversy is not as strong as that, but lack of clarity about what seed treatments are appropriate for organic seed. And it does clarify that seed treatment materials have to be on the national list or be non-synthetic. So some of the changes they did not make in the final guidance include the one for the database, and they've left it to the industry to create a database, which is what Chet will talk about in a little bit. They did what I just said about the 3 sources being absolute. They did acknowledge that that wasn't necessarily as absolute as some people may have thought, but there were alternative methods. And they did acknowledge the importance of training inspectors and certifying agents, which I maintain still needs to be done on an annual basis, because as the supply of organic seed is increasing, it's very hard to keep up. And even me, who probably looks at 30 to 50 seed catalogs every year, has a hard time keeping up with all the organic varieties, because we are expanding and we are growing, which is great. So that pretty much covers it. We are still working towards organic seed, but we still have a long way to go on this trajectory. And I do hope that we're going to get there for all of our sakes sooner rather than later. Thank you.
That was